I get it. When you're scrolling through a sea of gaming rigs, the glossy photos and headline specs can feel like a promise you're about to break. Maybe you've already bought a big iron desktop that looked amazing on paper, only to discover it throttles badly under load, or you've tried a compact box that couldn't even handle a single 1440p monitor without stuttering. That frustration is real, and it's why I'm doing this deep dive on the Kinupute Mini AI Server PC. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'll walk you through what actually matters when you plug this thing into your desk, your game library, and possibly your workflow. First off, the category you're dealing with here is a hybrid mini tower that tries to be both a high-end gaming machine and a small form factor workstation. That's a tall order because you're asking for a lot of horsepower in a space that can't accommodate massive cooling solutions. The most common buyer pain point and the one that trips people up the most is expecting a tiny chassis to behave like a full-size tower without any compromises. With the Kinupute Mini, the compromise shows up in three places: heat management, expandability, and the practical limits of its I/O layout. Let's start with heat. The Ryzen 9 9950X3D is a monster of a CPU, 16 cores, 32 threads, and built-in 3DV cache for those heavy compute games and AI workloads. In a traditional tower, the high-end liquid coolers you see on review videos keep temperatures low even during marathon sessions. In this Mini, Kinupute has gone with an advanced air cooling solution that is, according to the spec sheet, engineered for sustained performance. In practice, that means you'll see idle temps around 35-40 C, which is pretty decent for a compact box. Under load, say you're running Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra settings on 4 monitors, temperatures can climb into the high 70s. They don't hit the 90 C ceiling, but you'll notice the fans ramp up noticeably. If you're okay with a bit of fan noise and don't plan on overclocking, it's manageable. If you expected whisper-quiet operation while pushing the CPU for hours, you might be disappointed. Now, storage. The machine ships with a 4TB PCIe 4.0 NVMe SSD plus an additional 4TB SATA SSD. That's a total of 8TB, which is more than enough for a large game library, some 3D rendering projects, or a growing AI dataset. The dual-drive configuration is a real strength because the primary NVMe drive can host your OS and your most frequently accessed games, while the SATA drive can be a dedicated repository for less speed-critical files. I've seen users with comparable specs struggle when the second drive is a slower SATA that becomes a bottleneck for loading large textures. Here you bypass that entirely by keeping the main gaming workload on the faster drive. Graphics, of course, is the next big question. The RTX 5060 Ti with 16GB of GDDR5 memory is a step above the typical 5060 non-Ti models you see in most mid-range builds. In real-world testing, it handles 1080p and 1440p titles at high to ultra settings with frame rates well above 60 frames per second. The biggest surprise is the 6-monitor support, 2 HDMI 2.1 ports, 1 DisplayPort 1.4, and dual Type-C DisplayPort Alt mode. If you run a triple monitor setup for immersive flight sims or you want a dual PC workflow where the desktop drives your content creation monitors, that I/O flexibility is a genuine advantage. However, the 5060 Ti isn't a 4K powerhouse. Pushing a single 4K monitor at max settings in a demanding title will force you down to medium settings to keep frame rates smooth. So, if 8K gaming is a must-have, you'll need to look at a higher-tier GPU. Connectivity is where the Kinupute Mini shines and where it subtly sets a price on convenience. Two 2.5GB RJ45 ports give you wired networking that's 2.5 times faster than standard gigabit Ethernet, ideal for LAN parties or for a home office that streams 4K video while you game. Coupled with Wi-Fi 7, you have basically everything you could need for high bandwidth, low latency connections. In practice, though, the dual-port arrangement means you either need a switch or you'll have to toggle which network you're using for a given task. It's not a deal-breaker, but it does add a small layer of configuration for users unfamiliar with network bonding. What about daily usability? The Mini Tower measures roughly 81,317 inches, so it fits easily on a desk beside a dual-monitor setup. The front panel has a power button, a couple of USB-C ports, and an easy-access side panel for swapping out the SATA drive. The side panel is toolless, which makes upgrades less intimidating. If you're a hobbyist who likes to tinker, that's a plus. On the flip side, the compact design limits internal airflow, so any future upgrades that increase heat output like adding a second NVMe drive or a more aggressive GPU could push the system into thermal throttling unless you add external ventilation. Who should buy this? First, the gamers who want a powerful, future-proof machine without needing a full-size tower and who value a clean desktop aesthetic.